I don't know why. I just always was interested. I watched way too much TV as a kid, and loved to read. And I wanted to be a writer when I was little. And growing up in Logan County and in Abingdon, Virginia, I just was always really interested in what my local newspaper was doing. So I naturally was drawn to journalism when it came time to choose what to do for college. Mm-hmm. But then, and so my degree's in news editorial journalism, which is writing. But I graduated during the 2008-2009 recession, and no one was hiring writers, and newspapers were folding. Right. And so I decided I needed to learn new skills, and multimedia was the word at the time being used, that journalism students should learn multimedia. And so I kind of self-taught myself video and multimedia. And then I kind of haven't until this year wrote anything. And so I started doing films and through the guise of journalism at first, and now I'm trying to do like more creative filmmaking. Mm-hmm. So,
where'd you go to high school?
South Charleston High School here.
And then you went to
WVU. Western University. And I'm just glad that instead of giving up on storytelling, because I couldn't do it through writing, that I found filmmaking, because it really did sort of save me from, I don't know, choosing something boring. Like I have no clue what I'd be doing right now if I had given up at that time when it was really hard, or if I didn't have parents to fall back on too.
Right. Yeah. So what's the difference between the way you made films then and the way you make films now? Like I imagine you wore a lot more hats back then, or, you know, was it a process of giving up a lot of that responsibility and trust in people? Like, how did that work?
Well, I still am not good at doing that, giving up responsibility. Because I haven't yet had a project that I haven't, other than working with my husband, Curran, we shoot a lot together and he'll shoot sometimes. I mean, I kind of still do everything. I think the difference might be I'm a bit more cautious, which I don't necessarily think is a good thing. Curran and I were talking about this yesterday. I think when you're 23 or 24, like when I went to McDowell and I just lived there for 5 months, I didn't know anyone. I grew up near there, but I was just sort of hoping that people would be on board for being a part of this project. And I did my best, but I almost like the naivete of all that made the project what it was, because I really didn't have any ego about it. I was just like, this is going to be good. Like, this is going to be a fun community project. We're going to get young people involved. We're going to get elderly people involved. It's going to be awesome. Whereas now I feel like I hesitate to take on projects that are super risky because you have bills to pay and things change. So I don't know.
It's a lot of that. Like, I'd imagine with national exposure comes national criticism. Like, does it make you nervous to, I don't know, for me, like when I approach a documentary, I'm always thinking like, how is this going to make them feel watching this? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, but also I think it sacrifices a lot of what you could have done. Are you cautious in that way, or is it more of like, no, this is what I do for a living, and I got to make sure that this is something special instead of taking risks on something that, may turn out to be nothing. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely more cautious of using people's time for these types of things. I don't like to begin shoots without knowing what my end product's going to be, because I realize I'm asking for people's time. I'm asking for them to let me follow them around for months, years. And so I really like to know what I'm doing before I enter it. So that's part of the cautiousness. I'm trying to be considerate of people's time. But I do think there's a little bit of, I'm always curious how long people will be interested in hearing what I care about from this region. Like, I would just wonder if there's a time in which people will just be like, okay, that's enough. Like, we don't need to hear any more about Appalachia. Like, move on. Like, and I think that might be maybe some insecurity that I have that's not actually real. Because a good story is a good story. It doesn't matter if they're in Missouri, Texas, or West Virginia. Who cares? Like, if it's a good universal story that tells us something about who we are, it doesn't matter where they are. So I think there's a little bit of Appalachian insecurity within me that makes me hesitate to jump on things that, there's stories I've been sitting on for years that I would love to tell, that I'm just afraid, like, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself.
Right.
But if it's what you care about, what's it matter?
Yeah. And I'm going to brag about you for about 5 minutes here because, it is important that you keep doing that stuff because I know like a lot of things I do, I'm like, well, I'm going to do that again, or I'm going to do this again. Like nobody really, maybe nobody cares, but they really do because you're one of the few storytellers in this region that is actually creating exponential change. Like after you made Hollow, in my opinion, it's one of the sole reasons that McDowell County got so much national exposure and brought Parts Unknown in there, and they made such a good story that we really deserved. And, I think it's important to have, like people like you and Kern don't come around too often. So, I just want you to know, like, we appreciate so much, like I told you, you guys inspired me to do what I'm doing. So I would have never met you if you didn't do Hollow.
Right.
So,
That's good to hear.
I really get that, but it is important. And we can kind of talk about that a little bit. So tell everyone what Hollow is for someone who may not have watched it.
Yeah. Well, if you want to see it, it's hollowdocumentary.com, and it's a interactive website. I think it's 6, maybe 5 chapters, where each is themed around a different subject. Interactive documentary just means you choose your own adventure through the film. So there's 30 different people featured in the documentary, from issues of the arts and culture to environment to health to education. And you just scroll through this website and you can click play on certain video content, and certain video content is made by the community. So yeah, it was created in this age in which interactive documentaries were having a moment, and you don't see a lot of them anymore because we've moved to mobile devices and it's not a mobile friendly website. But yeah, it was community driven. We had monthly meetings at Mount View High School where people would create content. They'd bring in their own photos to scan. They'd write stories. Like the whole thing is, I think, 3.5 hours if you watch and click everything. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to, McDowell County. Still to this day, like there's a lot. I feel like there's a lot of positivity in terms of, except with the Trump like 2020 or 2016 elections, like people were still doing their tropes and treating people like sound bites. But pre to that, I do feel like there was a lot of momentum and good things, and it's like just a matter of shining light on some positive things. And that was one of the things from the get-go with Hollow. It was like, this isn't going to be a beatdown of McDowell County. This is supposed to be for the county, of the county, like be a part of this. And it wasn't so much about me, putting my opinions about this place. It was supposed to be like a quilt that the community helps put together. And so that was the idea of that project. And I think a lot of people, even that will never set foot in McDowell County, got a sense of that place in a different way. That was kind of just a really cool, there was an international audience for it.
Right. Last question. So what would you say to that kid in Southern West Virginia that just don't think that they live in the right area to be a storyteller? Like they think they need to move, or they think that, it's never possible for me. Just let me get my, which, your dad was a coal miner. I was a coal miner for 9 years. I'm thankful for it. It allowed me to do what I need to do. But that person who just thinks that doing something like this isn't possible.
Yeah, I would say it's more possible than ever. This is the best time to live if you want to be in media. It's a growing industry. I mean, look at what you're doing. You've completely changed your life and made a successful business, support your family, you're having fun. Like, you're a great example of it. And it is a growing business. Everybody's got a story to be told. And everyone needs that story told. And they're experts. The same way you go to the dentist when you need your teeth fixed. You go to a storyteller when you need your message, portrayed, whether that's a ad or documentary. But I do think it's interesting that we think, because we grew up here, that we could never be that. What's interesting about that is the fact that so many people drop in here to tell the stories, probably more than most regions of this country. So that to me says there's a lot of freaking stories here to tell. And who better to tell them than us?